The second book report for online behavioral finance, I read the book Scarcity by Sendhill and Eldar. So Scarcity, this is obviously one of the ever intriguing buzzwords in the world of economics. So the theory essentially is based on fulfilling unlimited wants with limited resources. In this book, they focus on more of a non-physical type of scarcity, whereas the scarcity that is so widely discussed in economics and essentially is the basis for economics is more of a physical scarcity, where it's looking at resources and how you allocate those. So in this book, they talked about a bunch of different interesting concepts, a few of which I talk about in my paper. They bring in dozens of different examples to help make you better understand these certain concepts. Some of the concepts such as focus dividends, tunneling, bandwidth, slack, and various others. So the first one I focused on was focus dividends. I think that these focus dividends, that they are kind of one of the more interesting concepts discussed in this book and in Scarcity. So essentially what focus dividend is that one of the examples they give is a man working. He has two separate work days. So one work day, he's busy with, he has a lunch meeting, he has various other meetings throughout the day, he has to call an old friend. So in a sense, he does have scarce time, but he doesn't recognize this. In the other example, he has a full workday with a large deadline to meet for a project, and of course he is conscious of this the entire time because it's ever important. He needs to meet this deadline. So he's busy in that sense, and his time is scarce. So where scarcity factors in is that when doing this, scarcity, when you have a deadline, scarcity is at the forefront of your mind. So you realize, oh, I only have so much time, my time is scarce, whereas you don't necessarily realize this in the first example of the man's day when he has meetings and nothing overly important or stressful. But when we are faced with this reality of our scarcity, our scarce time, whatever it may be, scarce resources, it leads to increased focus on hand. So in that sense, we have a dividend of focus because the scarcity of our time is at the forefront of our mind and something we recognize. And in following that, we are more focused because of it. We're likely to make less errors and mistakes on the work that we're doing. We can be more efficient in doing whatever work it is. We're more, like I said, more focused. You aren't distracted by as many things. A second concept discussed in this book is that of bandwidth. Bandwidth is essentially our mental capacity to manage various tasks and ideas at the same time. So this looks at how we organize our tasks, how we juggle them, and the order in which we perform them so that we make use of our mental capacity, our limited mental capacity, the scarcity of that, and allocating it out to different tasks. So when talking about bandwidth, the scarcity of our mental capacity eats away at our bandwidth, and thus it debilitates our abilities to think and process information in a rational, clear manner. So if we have a lot going on at one time and there's all these things, we can only process so much, and because of that, it may lead to irrational decisions or not thinking clearly, which can thus lead to irrational decisions. A third concept I wanted to briefly touch on is that of tunneling. In a way, tunneling is somewhat of a negative effect of our bandwidth and having limited a scarcity of bandwidth. So tunneling occurs when there's one task we have or one thing at the forefront of our mind that we only focus on this one thing, and thus it takes away from our ability to focus on other things. So one of the examples used in the book was a firefighter who died. And the interesting thing about this was he didn't die fighting a fire, he died on the way to the fire, because since he was so focused on preparing himself to fight the fire and putting himself in the mindset to be able to do this work, he neglected to put on a seatbelt. And after following this, it was found that a large percentage, larger than you would imagine, percentage of firefighters' deaths come from them overlooking other simpler tasks on the way to fight a fire. And this is a direct example of tunneling because they're so focused on this one big, larger aspect that they forget little common sense daily tasks that they would normally never forget. So I know that was just kind of a short overview, but I did really enjoy this book. I would highly recommend it to anyone who's even remotely interested in the idea of behavioral finance, even psychology or economics at all. It was one of the better books I've read in a while, and I really did enjoy it. I did take a lot away from some of the different concepts and various examples they gave throughout the book, and again, I would recommend it to just about anyone.